For 300 years, Earth had been silent, forgotten like a ghost among stars. The once great cradle of humanity had vanished from the galactic map after the collapse of the Soul Gate, a wormhole once used to connect the solar system to the wider galaxy. At first, other civilizations waited for a signal, a rescue mission, or even a cry for help, but none came. Years turned to decades, and decades into centuries. The Galactic Assembly, made up of dozens of advanced alien races, labeled Earth a lost origin world. Some believed Earth destroyed itself in war. Others thought it had simply run out of time. A few fringe scholars still whispered that humans were not gone but waiting. The truth came without warning. One quiet morning in the Zenthari system, an observation satellite belonging to the Varn Dominion picked up an unusual signal, a burst of energy so vast and pure it overloaded 3 of their oldest scanners. The signal was short, precise, and impossible. It came from the Sol system. The assembly gathered in panic and curiosity. They studied the signal. It wasn't just energy. It was a message encoded in quantum fractals, a language that only high-order artificial minds could fully read. Translated, it said, "We have returned, we remember." Fear began to spread. The signal repeated itself across over 100 known systems, waking old Terran listening posts that had been dead for centuries. These outposts powered on with perfect synchronization, their machinery flawless despite their age. Ships from various empires raced toward the Sol system, eager to find out what had happened. When the first scouts arrived at the system's edge, they found the solar system, cloaked in a shimmering barrier of unknown energy, glowing faint blue and pulsing like a heartbeat. No known technology could break through it. Probes sent in vanished. Then, just as suddenly as it appeared, the veil opened. From behind it came silence at first. No communication, no signal. Then came the fleet, massive ships, unlike anything ever seen, drifted out of the barrier like ghosts. They were dark and smooth, made of metals that shimmered in strange colors, hulls shaped to confuse radar and visual sensors. They moved in absolute silence, yet every ship broadcast a clear identifier, Terran Concord Authority. The assembly was stunned. Earth, long thought dead, had not only survived but grown in power. The Varn Dominion quickly dispatched one of their most experienced commanders, Veltar, to the old lunar relay station in Earth's orbit. It was thought to be abandoned, a ruin circling the moon for centuries. When Veltar arrived, expecting dust and silence, he found the station active, fully restored with impossible precision. Docking his sleek scout cruiser, Veltar stepped onto the platform and was met with soft white lights and artificial gravity stronger than anything his people used. Waiting for him was a man, human, tall, his skin a pale bronze, wearing black and silver armor without any visible weapon. He stood still as if he'd been waiting. "You are Veltar of the Varn Dominion," the man said calmly, his voice clear and unfiltered. "Earth has returned, and we remember." Veltar, despite his training, felt a chill. "You remember what?" he asked. The man's eyes held no hate but something deeper, calm determination. "The past," the man said, "the betrayals, the silence, the forgotten colonies. The assembly turned away from us when the gate fell. Now we return, stronger, and we bring with us the reckoning and the offer." Before Veltar could ask what the offer was, every relay station in 100 light-years lit up. Abandoned Terran posts, hidden research stations, and lost colonies, all powered on at once. Entire star charts updated in real time. Human voices, recorded or living, began speaking again after centuries of silence. The galaxy watched, breath held as old shadows awakened. But Earth had not come as a conqueror yet. No shots were fired, no planets invaded. Only presence, only the impossible. After centuries of quiet, the ghost had come back, more powerful than anyone imagined, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The energy veil surrounding the Sol system faded slowly, like mist burned away by sunlight, and from the fading blue light came the fleet, huge and silent, drifting forward in perfect formation, as if they had rehearsed this return for generations. Each ship was black and silver, shaped not like any known vessel, but like sleek predators, designed by minds no longer bound by old rules of war. They made no sound, sent no greetings, and ignored all hails. Every scanner from the watching fleets of the Galactic Assembly showed the same result: unreadable materials, no life signs, and energy levels so high they seemed impossible. The leading ship, larger than anything in known space, bore one word on its side in glowing letters: Concord. As it moved past the edge of the Sol system, every old Terran satellite flickered to life, connecting like nodes in a long, dormant web. A strange signal pulsed from them, soft, rhythmic, like a heart finally beating again after centuries asleep. In a council chamber floating above the gas giant Thalos, alien leaders gathered in confusion and fear. Who were these Terrans now? What had they become? Were they still human? The last time Earth had spoken, it was in panic and chaos during the gate collapse. Now it returned with a silence that spoke louder than war drums. Commander Veltar had barely returned from the lunar relay station when news spread that the Terran ship had left a device on the platform. It looked simple, just a black sphere, but it began to pulse, and with each pulse came data. At first the Assembly feared it was a weapon, but what it carried was far stranger. Archives, records of Earth's past, its science, its art, its stories, but not just its victories, its failures too. Footage of colony betrayals, Assembly silence during Earth's darkest hour, and the abandonment of the outposts. The Concord had not returned for revenge, it seemed. They had returned to remind the galaxy of what had been forgotten. But one question remained: why now? While politicians argued, smaller powers made their moves. The Krell Compact, proud and reckless, launched a stealth strike at one of the newly reactivated Terran outposts near the Helix Nebula. The Krell ships never returned. No explosions, no distress calls. Just silence, followed by a blue pulse from the stars, and then nothing. Witnesses on nearby planets described the sky, flashing once and going still. That night the stars seemed colder. Meanwhile, Terran ships arrived at former colonies, long since taken by other empires. But instead of fighting, the Concord began talks. Their envoys were calm, controlled, and eerily precise. They wore black armor, bore no weapons, and carried small silver cubes that hovered beside them. These cubes projected maps, histories, and agreements once thought lost. "We are not here to conquer," said one envoy to the Minari Council. "We are here to offer what was once promised: peace with strength, unity without chains." Some laughed, calling Earth arrogant. But when Terran ships hovered silently over the skies of old Terran colonies, not firing a single shot, the laughter faded. Every ship that approached was scanned, studied, and either allowed or quietly disabled and returned, always without damage. The galaxy began to understand that these were not humans of the past. They were something new, something sharper, something patient. Back on Earth, a new capital had risen over the ruins of old. Cities, tall towers of silver and glass, forests growing between buildings, and skyways filled with quiet drones. No pollution, no war zones, no divisions. It was a united world, the Terran Concord. They had hidden, healed, and evolved. Now, they were watching the galaxy with eyes that remembered everything. Still, no one knew what they truly wanted. Then, without warning, the Concord sent a message to the Assembly, a call for a summit, not in Assembly space, but in the Sol system. "Come," the message said. "See what we have become. Speak with us and decide if the future has space, for fear or for something greater." The message ended with a single image: Earth, whole and bright, with the words "Unity through strength" glowing beneath it. The Assembly was shaken. Many feared a trap. Others feared missing their only chance to understand the Terran Concord. As the galaxy held its breath, more Terran ships emerged from Sol, each carrying not weapons of war, but gifts, medicine, energy cores, clean tech never before seen. The return fleet had made its statement. Earth was back, not as a beggar or a victim, but as a giant awakened. The silence of Sol had ended, and now the stars waited for the sound of its next step. The galaxy was no longer calm, and fear had taken root in the hearts of leaders who once laughed at Earth's silence. After the Terran Concord's return, their great fleet moved with quiet confidence through old trade routes, never asking permission, never needing it. Across the stars, people watched as Earth's outposts, once forgotten, came alive again. And with each reactivation, the Concorde revealed more of its strange and powerful technology. No one knew the full extent of what Earth had built during its long silence, but it was clear that whatever they had become, they were now far ahead. The Galactic Assembly, once a symbol of unity, was filled with tension and whispers. Some delegates demanded open talks with the Concorde, hoping to avoid conflict. Others wanted to prepare for war, fearing that Earth's peace was only a mask. Across the chambers, images of Terran cities and ships played in silence, showing clean skies, powerful machines, and a united species that seemed to have no need for the assembly anymore. Many began to ask if the Terrans were still human at all. Meanwhile, messages from the Concorde continued to appear, always calm and direct. "We remember," they said. "We offer peace, not chains, alliance, not control." But hidden in these peaceful offers were records of the past, shocking truths from hundreds of years ago. Forgotten betrayals were brought back into light. Holograms showed colonies begging for help during the gate collapse, only to be ignored. Messages from human leaders pleading for support played on assembly terminals, their words filled with desperation. Now, Earth had returned with perfect memory and a cold kind of justice. Even without threats, the galaxy began to feel cornered. The Krell Compact, angry and humiliated after the loss of its stealth fleet, called for a strike on the Concorde. Their leaders claimed that humans were using fear to take power, and only strength would stop them. But before any attack could be made, a second Terran envoy arrived at Krell space, this time with a gift, a crystal device containing medical data capable of curing a disease that had haunted the Krell for centuries. No words, just action. The Krell leaders, stunned, postponed their war plans. Across many systems, smaller species began to watch Earth with new eyes. To them, the Concorde was not a threat, it was a promise. The Liroxi, small insectoid traders, often bullied by larger empires, publicly declared their support for the Terran Concorde. In response, a Concorde fleet moved to protect their trade routes from pirates. Within days, piracy in that sector dropped to zero. No battles, no wreckage. The pirates simply vanished. More species followed. The Minari, the quiet scholars of the Outer Rim, opened their archives to the Terrans in exchange for access to Earth's clean energy tech. The Concorde accepted and returned copies of lost Minari texts thought to be destroyed during the last Rim War. It became clear that Earth had not only rebuilt, it had been watching. Every political move, every ancient betrayal, every forgotten agreement had been recorded. And now Earth was acting not as a child race, but as a power that had waited, learned and prepared. Still, not everyone trusted their silence. Deep within, the Assembly, Dr. Elira Neo, a historian known for her neutral stance, began to study the Terran archives. She discovered something strange. The data Earth had sent was perfect, too perfect. Every file was complete, even records that had been lost during the dark gaps. She started digging and found old Krell transmission logs that confirmed an old horror. Centuries ago, when Earth was collapsing, the Krell had not only ignored the calls for help, They had intercepted and erased some of them, letting Earth suffer alone. These crimes had been hidden, forgotten by all but the Terrans. Elira's hands shook as she read the last line of an old human message. "If we survive, we will not forget." The storm was coming, and no one knew how it would break. More Concord. Ships appeared, slowly moving across neutral space, always calm, always quiet. People began to fear the silence itself. No demands, no threats, just presence. Then, on a cold morning in the Krell home system, a bright blue light lit up the sky. A Krell war cruiser, built to withstand planet-sized impacts, had tried to scan a Concord flagship too closely. The moment the scan reached a certain frequency, the Concord ship reacted. There was no explosion, no sound. The Krell ship simply ceased to exist, disintegrated in a flash of light so brief that most sensors missed it. The Concord vessel remained still, unmoved, its surface smooth and untouched. A message followed. "This is a defensive response. Further aggression will not be tolerated." Panic rippled across the galaxy. If Earth had weapons that could erase ships without firing a shot, what else could they do? Rumors spread like wildfire. Some said the Concorde had mastered dark energy. Others believed they had discovered ancient precursor tech during their silence. A few believed they had evolved beyond flesh entirely, becoming something more. But no one knew for sure, and the Concorde refused to explain. The Galactic Assembly called for another emergency session. Voices shouted over each other, fear, confusion, anger. In the middle of it all, Dr. Elira Nyos stepped forward, holding the proof of the Krell's betrayal and the timeline of Earth's long silence. "They are not here to destroy us," she said, "but they will not be victims again. They remember everything, and we must decide if we face the past with truth or fall into a future shaped by fear." Her words echoed in the chamber. Outside, in the cold dark of space, the Concorde fleet waited. They had returned not with rage, but with readiness. Now, the galaxy stood at the edge of something new, and no one could say whether it would end, in peace or in fire. Whispers moved faster than light now, echoing through trade routes, hidden channels, and shadowy council halls as the galaxy faced the quiet but growing presence of the Terran Concorde. And still, no one truly understood what Earth had become during its centuries of silence. Rumors claimed they had fused with machines. Others said they had unlocked forbidden knowledge from long-dead civilizations, while some feared they had simply chosen to remember what everyone else had chosen to forget. In the heart of the Galactic Assembly, where fear had begun to outweigh diplomacy, many voices argued that the Concorde was manipulating the galaxy by exposing old secrets, using truth as a weapon, and forcing alliances through silent fear. Yet none dared to attack again after the Krell cruiser vanished without warning. Dr. Elira Neo, now watched with both suspicion and admiration, continued her quiet search for the full truth, combing through ancient files, recovered transmissions, and deep assembly archives. And what she found changed everything. Hidden beneath the carefully sent Terran data were embedded encryption markers, old codes used by early human colonies that had once been part of a secret Earth initiative called Project Solstice, an effort to prepare humanity for the worst, including betrayal from its own allies. That project had been abandoned when the gate collapsed, or so everyone thought, but the codes now proved that the Concorde was not just reacting to history, they had expected it. As she decoded more, Elira uncovered files about the Ralnar Pact, a shady deal made in secret by Assembly elites long ago, where the survival of Earth's colonies was exchanged for resource access to richer, more stable systems. Earth had been sold out, its people left to die, and the Assembly had buried the evidence under sealed records and time. Elira stared at the blinking file name, Operation Eclipse, and realized Earth had never stood a chance back then, not with friends like these. Meanwhile, across dozens of systems, old human colonies that had been absorbed or erased by alien governments began receiving strange signals from orbit, and soon Terran shuttles landed, always without violence, always with the same message: you have not been forgotten. People who had lived under foreign flags their whole lives found themselves called by ancestral names, offered documents and histories showing who they truly were. And slowly, a quiet wave of loyalty returned to Earth, not out of fear, but out of something deeper: recognition. The galaxy watched this rise with dread and wonder, and in response, secret factions within the assembly began meeting in the shadows, speaking of strikes, of sabotage, of removing Earth before its influence spread further. Among them was Chancellor Vor of the Aelari Union, a brilliant but cold strategist who saw the Concord not as a threat to peace but to control. He ordered covert teams to begin probing Concord space for weaknesses, even as public talks with Terran envoys continued. But the Concord seemed always one step ahead. When Vor's spy ship slipped into an asteroid belt near Mars, it found itself facing a structure unlike anything known, a vast orbital array that shimmered in and out of phase, invisible to sensors, surrounded by drones that moved like insects, watching every approach. The spy ship tried to retreat, but its systems shut down instantly, and a voice, calm, synthetic, spoke only once. "You have entered protected Terran space. You will be returned unharmed. No further warning will be given." True to its word, the ship reappeared 2 days later at its point of entry, fully functional, but with every memory file wiped clean and the crew unable to recall a single moment. Vor was furious but also shaken. Earth had defenses that didn't just stop attacks, they erased them. Back on the assembly station, Elira met with a quiet figure who had been watching her progress. A Terran envoy named Sarin Voss, tall, patient, and precise. He wore no rank, no medal, just a simple badge shaped like a rising sun. "You've seen the shadows," he told her, his voice soft but firm. "Now you understand why we returned prepared." Elira asked the question that had haunted her. "Is this revenge?" Sarin shook his head. "No, it's memory. The galaxy cannot build a future if it buries its past." He handed her a small cube containing the full, unredacted history of the Assembly's early dealings with Earth, including evidence of the Eclipse Pact. "We will not act first," he said, "but we will not allow silence to rule again." As she took the cube, she realized the Concord didn't need to fire a shot. Truth, in the right light, could be more dangerous than any weapon. Still, there were those who believed only war could stop Earth. Vor met with leaders from the Dreval Syndicate and the San Dominion, forming a secret pact to disable the Concord by striking key nodes in their communication web. The plan was daring and fast. 3 elite teams sent to ancient Terran satellites that had suddenly come back online across distant sectors. But when each team arrived, they found ruins that looked abandoned, dusty and dead, until they tried to breach the control cores. In each case, they triggered hidden systems that responded not with violence, but with light. Entire ships were immobilized, surrounded by glowing fields that suspended them in space, and the same message played in each crew's mind. "Knowledge is not a weapon. Memory is not a crime. You have chosen shadows. We have chosen light." No one was harmed. No one could move. Then, just as suddenly, they were freed, allowed to return, their weapons untouched, but their leaders embarrassed. Vor's alliance cracked as blame spread and allies withdrew. The conquered had done nothing but defend, but each defense made their enemies look weaker. More worlds now reached out to the Terrans, not with fear, but with curiosity. What did Earth want? What was their true goal? Sarin Voss gave the same answer each time. "We seek what was denied, truth, unity, and peace without fear." And yet the galaxy trembled, For when peace arrives, wrapped in perfect silence and power, people begin to wonder what price it demands. As the assembly split into factions, Dr. Illyra Neo prepared to release the eclipse documents to the public. The truth was ready. The galaxy stood on a knife's edge, and behind it all, Earth watched, calm, waiting, and far from finished, in the cold silence of deep space, where light traveled slowly and secrets floated like dust between stars. The first spark of open conflict came not from the Terran Concord, but from fear, pure and desperate fear, born in the minds of those who had grown too used to ruling without question, and now felt their grip slipping as the memory of Earth returned to life. The spark came when Chancellor Vore, pushed into a corner by political failure and slipping influence, gave a single hidden order. Strike first, make Earth bleed, show the galaxy that the Concord could be hurt. And so, from the shadows of the Drevel Rift, a fleet of stealth-class warships cloaked in dark energy shells moved toward the border of Terran-protected space. Their target not a military base or command center, but a restored colony station called Harmony Reach, an old human settlement, rebuilt by the Concord as a symbol of peace and renewal, home to over 60,000 Terran citizens and now a growing hub for interspecies trade. Vore believed destroying it would send a message, break the illusion of safety, and force the Concord to reveal the limits of its power. But what he failed to understand, what so many failed to see, was that Earth's silence had not been ignorance or weakness, it had been the long breath before a storm. As the Drevel ships entered the system, hidden behind solar shadows and cloaked signatures, the skies above Harmony Reach stayed quiet, stars blinking gently in the void, station life calm and unaware, children running through glass gardens, traders unpacking goods from far systems, scientists studying rare minerals under soft lights. Then in a single moment, sensors lit up, alarms echoed across the decks, and distant flashes danced at the edge of the system as Drevel torpedoes launched, silent, deadly, aimed to kill without warning. But just before impact, they vanished. Not exploded, not shot down, but simply gone, as if the space they moved through had swallowed them whole. Confusion gripped the Drevel commanders, who ordered scans, then more weapons, but each launch ended the same way: disappearance. That was when the Concord responded. Across the system, the stars seemed to shift, and dozens of Terran vessels appeared not from warp or jump, but as if emerging from invisibility, sleek and silent, glowing faintly with energy that scanners could not read, their hulls marked only by a rising sun emblem. They did not speak. They did not warn. They moved. In perfect silence, beams of pure light stretched from the Terran ships, not firing to destroy, but slicing through Drevel ships with surgical precision, removing engines, cutting power cores, locking weapons, and within minutes the entire Drevel fleet was paralyzed, floating helpless in the dark, every system shut down. One by one, Terran vessels surrounded each attacker, pulling them into formation with invisible fields. And then came the voice, not loud, not angry, just clear and cold. "You have chosen fire. We choose restraint. This will not happen again." The captured ships were towed to a Concord-controlled asteroid, where their crews were released and treated with respect, given food, rest, even communication with their homeworlds. And then, quietly, they were sent back with a single file to deliver: a recording of the attack, the Terran response, and a final message from Concord Command: "We do not seek war, but we will not flee from it." The galaxy froze. News of the failed assault spread like wildfire. Vore denied involvement, but the captured logs proved otherwise, and as his enemies rose, his allies vanished. Civil unrest broke out on his homeworld, and soon he disappeared, his last known message filled with bitterness. "We should have ended Earth when we had the chance." Across assembly space, leaders who had once feared Earth now feared what would happen if Earth was pushed further. But the attack had awakened something else too, an old pain, a buried anger. On Earth itself, for the first time since their return, the people gathered not in celebration or science, but in mourning. For even though Harmony Reach had been saved, lives had still been lost. Station workers killed by depressurization, rescue pilots gone missing in the defense. On a mountain near the ruins of old Tokyo, thousands stood as names were read aloud, and above them a new banner was raised beside the Concorde flag, deep black, with a single white star, the symbol of the Remembrance Fleet. They would not wait for another strike. In the following weeks, the Concorde moved faster, more openly. More old colonies were reactivated, more outposts reclaimed not with force, but with order and protection. Yet everywhere the Concorde expanded, something followed, a sense that fire was now behind every shadow. Dr. Elira Neo, watching all this unfold from the assembly station, found herself caught between duty and conscience. For she had the full truth in her hands, the Eclipse files, the betrayal of Earth, the proof of every lie that led to the silence of Seoul, and she knew that if she released it, the galaxy might finally understand why Earth had returned with such quiet power. But she also feared it would lead to chaos, riots, collapse. Still, as more systems aligned with the Concorde and others whispered of secret weapons and preemptive wars, she realized the truth had to come before the fire returned. At a public assembly summit, with every faction gathered and millions watching, across the stars, she stood before the ancient podium and activated the file. Her voice did not tremble. She showed the messages from dying colonies, the ignored calls, the Drevel and Krell betrayals, the bribes, the deals, the silence that followed. And then she played Earth's last recorded message from the time of the gate collapse, a single line sent on every frequency before their long silence. We asked for help. You gave us none. We will remember. The chamber fell silent. Some wept, some shouted, some left, but none could deny what they had seen. Outside, above assembly orbit, the Remembrance Fleet waited, not as conquerors, not as saviors, but as survivors who had built something stronger in the ashes of betrayal. Fire had come to the void, but Earth had not burned. They had endured. And now the galaxy stood on the edge of something no one could stop. Only one part remained: the decision of who would light the next match. The stars no longer flickered with fear as they once had when the name Earth returned to the galaxy. For now, everywhere from trade hubs to research stations to the deep void between empires, there was only one name spoken with both caution and respect. The Concorde, the reborn unity of Earth and its people, who had returned not with revenge, but with vision, shaped by loss, silence, and the long weight of memory. After the failed attack on Harmony Reach and the public release of the Eclipse documents by Dr. Elira Neo, the galaxy shifted in a way no war or treaty had done in centuries, because for the first time the truth was laid bare, and the illusion of a pure, fair galactic assembly crumbled before the eyes of trillions, as whispers of betrayal turned into shouts for change. And many of the oldest powers found themselves abandoned by their own worlds, while others, once afraid to speak, now reached out to the Terran Concorde, not as servants, but as equals seeking order. In the months that followed, the Remembrance Fleet did not strike, did not occupy, but instead began deploying peace stations, massive orbital platforms equipped not just for defense, but for education, medicine, and diplomacy, each carrying millions of records about Earth's history, science, and culture, open to all. And in those halls, once divided species sat side by side, reading the same texts, listening to the same words, and learning a forgotten truth: that unity was not born from strength but from shared struggle. On former battlefield worlds like Kalis Prime and Karoth 5, Concorde engineers helped rebuild shattered cities, while old human colonies, hidden for centuries, returned to the light, restored and linked to the growing Terran web. Yet even as hope grew, so did the tension beneath it, for not everyone believed the conquered's rise was peace, and some saw their order as control. A faction of exiled assembly elites formed a secret network called the Hollow Ring, made up of those who had lost power and influence, and they planned to strike not with weapons, but with chaos, aiming to turn the galaxy's hope against itself. Their plan began with whispers, fake reports that the Concord was replacing leaders in allied worlds, stealing resources, brainwashing citizens, and in the dark corners of neutral space, riots sparked, minor trade vessels vanished, and people began to question whether the Terrans had come to save or to rule. Concord intelligence quickly detected the pattern, but chose not to respond with force. Instead, they revealed the ring's communication lines to the public, showing in real time how they planted fear, paid mercenaries, and even used fake Concord uniforms to stage attacks. When that truth came out, the Hollow Ring fractured, and its members were hunted not by Terrans, but by their own former allies, who now feared their lies more than they feared Earth. Yet, the damage done forced the Concord to make a choice: remain as a growing alliance, or become something larger. After months of careful planning and dialogue, with every Concord world voting independently, the decision was made, and the galaxy witnessed the birth of a new era. The Concord Pact, no longer a quiet Terran-led unity, but a true interstellar civilization, founded on open memory, shared law, and mutual defense. It had no emperor, no dictator, no single voice. Instead, its high table held leaders from every member species, human and non-human alike, and its laws were built not from conquest, but from lessons engraved in Earth's long silence. The symbol of the pact, a white flame inside a dark circle, was not a sign of fire, but of the light that comes after it. Still, some resisted. The San Dominion, once proud rulers of 7 systems, refused to join and instead launched a blockade around the trade, out leading to conquered territory, hoping to break their influence through hunger and delay. But instead of warships, Concord sent transports, large, unarmed and filled with food, water and medicine, and they let the whole galaxy watch as San forces opened fire on aid convoys. Public support for the Dominion collapsed overnight, and after a peaceful Concord flotilla arrived with 10 times the supplies, even San citizens rose up and forced their rulers to resign. The blockade ended without a single Terran shot fired. Meanwhile, Dr. Elira Neo was invited to Earth, not as a guest, but as a symbol of unity. And there she walked through cities built from glass and stone, powered by clean energy, filled with people who smiled not with pride, but with purpose. In the Concord archives, she stood before the preserved recording of Earth's last cry before silence, and then saw the response recorded centuries later. A child, born on a distant colony, now grown and saying simply, "We remember too." That moment stayed with her as she returned to the stars, now serving not the Assembly, but the Pact's historical council, where memory was no longer buried, but kept alive. In the years that followed, war became rare, not because fear ruled, but because truth did. The Concord did not promise peace forever, no system could, but it offered clarity, and with it the galaxy slowly healed. Ruins became cities. Borders became transit zones. Forgotten people found voices. And always, above every packed building, on every ship and every planet that chose the Concord path, one message was etched in 100 languages. From silence we spoke. From memory we rise. From unity we endure. The Concord era had begun, and while its path would never be simple, it was one chosen not by force, but by choice. Earth had returned, not to lead alone, but to remind the stars of what they had. Once forgotten, that light once lost can still find its way back.